morning, everyone. It is only morning for me, but it's about 9 a.m. here on the West Coast. My name is Billy Bob. This is episode 83 of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. We've got our normal panel, Ben Toth and Paige Hungry at 6 p.m. there. Ian Kummer from a suburb in Moscow. It is 7 p.m. there. We got Regis Tremblay streaming live from Crimea, Yalta, I believe. Is it 7 a.m. 7 p.m. as well in Yalta, Regis? Okay.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
And Carlo Parcelli coming from Washington, D.C. It's about noon Eastern time there. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We were debating on titles and topics of today's program. We always want to discuss current events, but it's been pretty interesting. Scott Ritter, everybody is familiar with Scott Ritter. He is a friend of our show. He's been on Regis' program and just a great analyst. He's got a real big heart, and he's dedicated his life to stopping nuclear proliferation and trying to make sure that humanity survives. And recently, he's gotten pretty upset, and I thought we could talk about this whole topic, and look at it from different angles. And I just want to get everybody's opinion on this. We can call it a debate, I guess. I don't know if you want to call it a debate between Carl Jha and Scott Ritter. It's more of
Let's give a bit of a background there. So first he went on Alex from Reportify Media. I think that's the YouTube channel where he had this, I wouldn't call it a dust-up, but rather emotional debate with Carl Jha, which later sort of died down as other guests returned. And more recently, he went on Anya Kay, who is Through the Eyes Of channel, right, on YouTube, where he volunteered to bring this up, and he was even more emotional and saying he's done. He's done trying to convince to try to save the world, and he absolutely dunked on Carl Jha. Is the background? I have some thoughts on that too. Do you want to start, Billy Bob?
Well, I mean, I would say that I put both links in the comment section or the description of this video. So both links are there. If nobody knows what we're talking about, check out those links. I think it's a very worthwhile discussion, and I definitely understand Scott's, issue. I mean, he has really dedicated his life to the nuclear non-proliferation issue, and he has traveled, around the world trying to bring peace and understanding. And so I get it. Like he is unhappy with humanity right now. With regards to the specific disagreement that he had with Carl Jha, and we said it on a previous show, I think to a large extent, though, they were talking past each other. And I'm not sure that exactly why Scott is angry with Carl. I don't really understand that. It just seems like if we're going to blame somebody for this, there's two real points I want to make about this issue. If we're going to blame somebody, 100% of the blame is on the West and the misleadership class, the Western elites, the Western oligarchy that have brought us to this point, because China doesn't want nuclear war. Russia doesn't want nuclear war, but they're not going to surrender just because the West is, not bluffing, So number one, all of our anger, 100% of our anger needs to be directed at the Western oligarchy. And number two, we can't do anything about it. We can register our discontent. We can call our congressmen and complain, but ultimately they're going to decide what they're going to do. And there is not a thing we can do about it, because this isn't a democracy. This is a fucking oligarchy. So, when viewed from that perspective, I'm not sure it makes any real sense to get angry at people and accuse them of thinking that the U.S. is bluffing. Whether or not, Carl Jha thinks the U.S. is bluffing, I mean, it doesn't matter. Personally, I hope that the U.S. isn't suicidal. I hope they're not thinking in the Malthusian, let's go ahead and eradicate the population and whittle it down to just us elites, like the movie Fallout, like the series Fallout. I hope that's not what they're really thinking. But if it is there anything I can do about it? Are we going to convince Russia that that's what they're thinking, and so Russia's just going to surrender to save humanity? I don't know if those are realistic or rational, responses. Regis, you have some thoughts, please?
Yeah, no, but I'll wait.
Okay, well, I do.
Thank you, Ian.
Sure. So, I mean, I do think there's a lot of bluffing coming from the Western side of the dialogue because, I mean, I mentioned this in the last show, the tit for tat of Russia putting medium range nukes in Belarus was not, to my knowledge, reciprocated. There is probably a fairly large, what I would call a fairly large missile gap, and it's in Russia's favor right now. And, and I also said this previously, I don't believe in mutually assured destruction. I think it's a very popular myth for both sides to propagate. Putin's mentioned that before, a lot of Western commentators have mentioned that before. I don't believe they actually think that way. I think the 2, maybe 3 nuclear superpowers in the world play it to win. Now, China does not have anywhere close to the number of nukes as either Russia or USA. And the reason why is because they viewed theirs they actually had the policy of a smaller country. So like a smaller country like the UK or North Korea. I mean, British people would not be happy if they heard me compare North Korea to the UK, but this idea we're a smaller country. It's fair though. We're a smaller country, but we have a few nukes, so taking us out is not worth the effort. There are at least several countries that could easily obliterate North Korea by themselves, but if they lose a few major cities, that would not be worth the effort. So for a smaller arsenal, it's a deterrent. But when you're you're in the top, like, let's say 3 countries in the world, it stops working. So I think the Chinese, that light bulb went off in their head a while ago that, nukes as a deterrent is not enough. If we got into some sort of nuclear confrontation with the other nuclear powers, just damaging them a bit is not enough. We actually have to have the nuclear arsenal to wipe them out. So that light bulb went off in their head, and they've been rapidly expanding their nuclear arsenal, along with the other arms of their armed forces. So as of right now, the USA is at a disadvantage. If you look at the budget reports, the nuclear triad is not looking too good right now. Russia really upgraded their arsenal. Even in the 90s, they were at least keeping it from falling apart. And, we've done nothing with ours. So, and, if we're talking another 5-10 years at the most, and there's going to be a question of if they even work anymore.
Yeah.
And the other problem is, go ahead.
The Minuteman is just in a similar state to the US Trident, which I think a couple of months ago, they tried to shoot its span and almost killed Grant Shapps, the defense secretary, like a couple of 100 meters from the summit.
Yeah, so it's a very, very large project. And the problem is that because it's a private sector defense industry, a lot of those companies that made key components for the Minute, so it's not even a question of upgrading them. Those companies don't even exist anymore. They shut down decades ago. So it's just like, it's not even modifying them. It's just, or upgrading them. It's just, we would probably just have to start from scratch.
They brought back experts from retirement who still understand these things,
Yes. So it's not looking good. So when you have Russia with an advantage, and I think that advantage is going to grow, the gap's going to grow. And then I think eventually we'll also have a gap with China. And that's going to make things really interesting when, when 2 out of 3 of the big nuclear superpowers in the world have a major edge on us. That's when
So, Ian, what I hear you saying is there's no way that the West can think that they're going to win a nuclear war, that they know better than to believe that they could win it. And because of that, you think that's kind of a bluff?
Well, when you look at, that Clausewitz model of war, Clausewitz wrote the book on war, and he was, so basically, if you look at if one side has an advantage in a particular dimension, if there's different dimensions of warfare, if you have a clear advantage in one dimension, you're going to be more aggressive in that dimension. And if you know you have a disadvantage in that dimension, you're going to be less aggressive. So I do think there's a pattern that Russia believes they have an advantage, a nuclear advantage. So they are more aggressive in that rhetoric. And the West is, the only belligerency I've seen from, American or NATO talking heads is that, if Russia tried to use a nuke, we would use magic to destroy them all in the silos, basically, our surgical strikes, and of course those statements were all made before the strikes on the Houthis, before the strikes on the Iranian assets. So we've seen what these surgical strikes they like to talk about are actually capable of, and the answer is not much. So
don't want to bring up F-16s yet because I desperately want to hear from Regis, but can I just have a crack at just to put Carlo's mind at ease, all the things I agree with Scott Ritter. I do believe the American leadership is barking mad, and they might be tempted to say that. I mean, they're nuclear biased because they can't win a peer-to-peer conflict. They can win against, farmers in the Middle East and non-existent air defense. And that says, oh, shit, we're 2 steps behind. And that's when they can do crazy things. So, yeah, I agree we're in danger. I agree the American leadership is completely nuts and desperate. So is the NATO leadership now that the Ukraine project is crumbling before our eyes. I agree with all of that. I echo Billy Bob here, is what I don't like is Carlo is also a very knowledgeable guy with huge historic background. He knows everything about China's history. Try not to put it on this anger, which I also feel, and I understand he's not divided. He's divided because he grew up in America and he was part of the Marines, the good guys and all that. I say this with utmost respect. Put that anger where it belongs, not on the targets of U.S. foreign policy. That's the only thing I took issue with. The whole thing came down to where Carl Jarre made reasonable points, thinking the adversary was logical, and the adversary is not logical or rational. And he just passed all that as Carl Jarre being flippant because US is crazy. And that's why you say, I agree, they talk next to each other. They really didn't hear each other. That's what I had to say on that. I do love both of those people. And they gave a lot to me by way of information about the world. Okay? And I really want to hear from Regis. What's the Yalta perspective on nukes and the end of the world? Are we all going to die?
A little caveat here before I begin. Since I have been living here in Yalta, and that's going on 5 years now, I've been coming here since 2016. But in these last 4+ years, the anger that I felt has pretty much dissipated. I don't anymore allow myself to feel anger or rage about any of this. I feel it doesn't do me any good at all. Now, I came here in 2016 to finish a film. And I came here because I was terrified of the possibility of a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. Having lived through October in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, when we were terrified day and night until Kennedy and Khrushchev saved the world from destruction. Then I live all the rest of those years feeling fairly comfortable that there was this détente. There was this understanding that no one is going to win this thing. But in 2016, to finish this film, which I entitled 30 Seconds to Midnight, Doomsday, I had to come to Russia to find out for myself if they were this red menace, this evil empire, this godless people. And it didn't take me very long to find out that those were all lies. that everything we'd been told about Russia forever and the Soviet Union forever had been lies. But at the end of this film in 2017, when it was published, I said, will those crazed neocons in Washington, today you can call them whatever you want, the military industrial complex, Mickey Mac, as Ray McGovern refers to them, doesn't matter, recognizing they have lost this epic battle for the future control of the planet, take the whole world down with them in a nuclear Armageddon. At the end of that film, Dr. Helen Caldicott, a very well-known person in America, anti-nuclear everything.
I think Carlo knows her.
Australian, yeah.
She's Australian, and she's back in Australia. She added, are we humans an evolutionary aberration designed in an evolutionary sense not to survive? And she added, I wonder. Now, what is that? 7 years have passed since I made that film and those comments. And I have been feeling like we are on the eve of destruction. I, for the past week and a half, have basically not paid any attention to any of the news. I didn't hear about Scott Ritter's rage until I clicked on with you folks today. And many other articles that have been sent to me, I've just not even opened them. And I'll tell you why. I do believe we're living in a very, very dangerous period in all of human history. But what can I do about it? And this has been my attitude, and I've been speaking with many of my Russian friends and family here, my Russian family here, and I've come to the conclusion, and I don't think it has anything to do with my age, which is bordering up on 80, but I have come to the conclusion that I have to stay in the moment. I have to try to enjoy all that the Creator has blessed us with, to enjoy all that humanity has to offer. And I'm fortunate to be in a place that is very calm, very peaceful, and I have to add, very spiritual or religious, and religious. In the last several days and weeks, when I've talked to family here and close friends, I have to tell you, I don't sense any concern about a nuclear catastrophe. That people, this is what I've come to believe that most Russians believe, at least older Russians. They believe that they are a country that is good, that is on the side of goodness and morality. They have faith in their president and their government and their military, and they are not worried about tomorrow. They are living life today like they always have, and not like it's eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die. It's because they're not living in this echo chamber of fear and fear-mongering that I think is happening in the West. And for me, that I've pulled back from a lot of that noise, it has allowed me to stay more in the present and to not worry about what might come tomorrow. So this is what I would add to what I think people here that I know in Yalta, and I think many people across Russia are feeling the same way. And what else can we do? I don't want to live my life feeling anger and rage. I don't want to live my life depressed because the end of the world is coming, or depressed because I can't do enough to stop it. Most of us have been this our whole lives. And so that's my piece, Ben.
Thank you, Reverend Regis. A very serene, not at all concerning take, but
you're killing me, Ben. You're killing me.
No, you managed to absorb the spirit of the land, I would say, really well. Yeah.
Well, what I will say this is, it's not. Russians wouldn't refer to it as the spirit; they would refer to it as the Russian soul.
Yeah.
And I think unless you live here, and unless you become part of Russian life and Russian family, like I've been fortunate, any of these people commenting that supposedly are the greatest analysts in the world don't understand the Russian soul.
Okay, unless Carlo wants to add something, I'll just explain that before the show, he said he doesn't really want to partake in this discussion about Ritter versus Ja, and we accept that.
I'll stay. Helen Caldecott, in particular, is probably the most noteworthy anti-nuclear spokesperson I've ever encountered. And I remember when I had community access TV show, we often read her articles from the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists and elsewhere. She is lucid and brilliant, and I don't and in no way unnecessarily alarmist. As far as the I have a little different take than Regis. As far as this subject matter goes, everyone is imbued with the fear of atomic annihilation that has any kind of knowledge of the world at large. I have to qualify it because there are many Americans that don't even know that there is the possibility of a nuclear exchange. They don't know it. It's not in their psyche, and that's a glorious place to be, I'll tell you. But I don't care anymore. I don't care. I've already faced death, and I know what it looks like. And if you don't want to accept what Scott says or what I say, or what I don't give a shit anymore. I'm done with it. That's a subject matter I'm done with, and I can afford to be done with it because my life is almost done. So that's all I have to say about it. Done.
So I think, Scott's upset that people aren't taking it more serious, and that there's not a bigger fear, and I can appreciate that. Definitely it's unnecessary to bring us to this point. Like, how the West has brought us to this point where we are, entirely unnecessary. But at the same time, it's 1000% the fault of the West. And so, what are we to do? Like, I mean, so in a sense, that Scott said directly, I want people to be scared. I want people to fear what's happening. And he was very passionate about that. I'm not sure what good that does. What good does it do? Like, again, if we had a democracy, okay, we'll vote those fuckers out. But we can't do that because it's not a democracy. So,
Yeah, but you haven't.
It's more. Go ahead, Carlo. What?
No, you haven't dedicated your life to it. That's all. Like
I sure haven't.
Well, I don't think he has to.
He's been proud. Oh, go ahead, Regis.
No, I mean, people come to this awareness at different times, and because of different circumstances, I can appreciate, Billy, Bob, how you feel. I do. I don't consider myself an expert any more than you or anybody else. We're all trying to do our part. It doesn't matter to me. And Carlo, I'm so happy that I've got to know you. I can feel what you feel. I haven't faced death, but I have come to the point in my life where I believe that the anger and the rage don't do any good for me or anybody else. Billy Bob, when I made that film, 30 Seconds to Midnight, I thought that film would scare the shit out of everybody. That's why I made it. It was pretty much banned in the United States, deleted from YouTube, but it's gone all over the world. Other people have related to that, and lots of Americans. But what can we do?
Yeah.
I mean, Scott, I respect Scott tremendously. Obviously,
We
he's
all
been on
do.
my show dozens of times. The anger is not going to wake people up. The rage is not going to wake people up. I think what he's already done is more than probably any other human has done in the cause to dismantle all of that and get rid of it. Do I understand his frustration? Yeah. If I could talk to him right now, I would say, Scott, you're on the edge, my friend. I think you should step back, enjoy your wife and your daughters, and enjoy life a bit, and not stop what you're doing. Just cut back and calm down.
You'll be glad to know he ended this latest interview with Anya saying he's going to get his dose of Russia calm because he's on the way to Russia to speak with the Russian, and said he's probably going to have, like, it's a therapy. You know, he's going to come back more relaxed.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's going to be many Russians that are going to be listening to him, other than a few select audiences like he's had in the past. People here, most people that don't know who he is, and they don't care. He's another American, and I'm afraid that's how a lot of Russians look at us, just another American.
Well, I mean, it's the same with, I think, Tucker Carlson and Americans in general. It's like, oh, this is another American guy.
Guy from Pindostan, which I'm so glad has returned. Medvedev uses it for America. It's now called Pindostan. All right. Well, as long as we're all here, shall we have some fun? How about we look at some body language from the Green Goblin himself, who gave an interview to The Guardian to say that Putin's mad. Everybody on board with that?
Yes, let's go for it.
It begins in English. I'm not going to interrupt. And I don't know why he reverts to his Ukraine-Russian, whatever it is, but just the body language. I'm not sure this can all be attributed to the white powder. Check it out.
Putin is, it's, now when I said that he's sick, I think that he's not crazy. Yes, you understand. So he's dangerous. And це набагато страшніше. Розумієте? Тобто він не зупиниться.
He won't stop. I just thought that's a fun 30 seconds to see the actual state of mind of this guy. He's began firing like US-aligned officials in Kiev. He's still talking about, he gave out a memo to his top officials to openly criticize Biden, President Biden of the US, and Xi Jinping for not coming to his stupid Swiss peace summit. I mean, last episode we said the walls are closing in, not the Trump sense, but in the real sense. I think, yeah. I mean, there was this article in the Washington Post about some real rifts between the allies, the United States and Ukraine, and they try to smooth it out by signing another one of these, what do you call them? Not bipartisan, two-country security agreements.
Bilateral.
Thank you. Bilateral security agreements to calm things down, but it really is. It's the end of the road time is what I feel coming here.
It's like, what is the good? What is the good of a bilateral agreement with, say, Spain and Ukraine? What is
now Sweden
going to do? And it's like, it's very similar to the Poles and their bilateral security agreements they had with the UK. It's one of those countries. I think Ukraine's kind of got the same problem. It's one of those countries where nobody that actually shares a border with them likes them. So they have to find these countries that don't share a border with them for these. But if they don't share a border with you, it's not a useful person to have a security agreement with. So the people that actually share a border. I mean, is Poland? I didn't actually see the news. I don't think Poland is actually one of the countries that has bilateral security agreement with Ukraine.
No, the Brits started it. France continued. He went to Spain to get one. He went to Belgium, basically. So Brussels to get one. Portugal, and now Sweden. I think that's the list.
Yeah.
Maybe incomplete. Don't quote me.
Yeah,
on that.
Hungary isn't going to give them one. Romania isn't going to give them one. None of those countries that actually neighbor Ukraine are going to give them a security agreement. So it's useless.
So, I mean, they're in a very difficult situation. Nobody's in a more difficult situation than Zelensky. And it's kind of apparent when we see his body language. Because, the oligarchs in the West, they're going to continue their oligarch status, whether or not Ukraine falls. And, I mean, it really just, comes down to the question, what is the West going to do? Because they have no cards to play. None of these bilateral agreements are going to solve anything for the West. And that's obvious. And so it comes down to, the big question. And I hate to take it back to that discussion we were having a second ago, but that's it. Like, is the West going to, bring us to nuclear destruction to save face and to, stave off the inevitable multipolarism? I would like to think no. And I don't think they're suicidal. I don't think we're going to have fallout, in reality, that series. Does that make me flippant? Maybe. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. But, I'm not going to live in fear, Regis. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it either. I'm going to, live my life to the fullest. I'm going to do what I can to, spread understanding, spread awareness, because that's really the problem in the West, especially, is the lack of understanding, a lack of awareness. And so I take meaning from doing that. I get meaning. My life has meaning. Doing my best to try and spread awareness, spread understanding. And Scott does that too. Scott does way more than, infinitely more than me and more than most people on his, his trips to Russia. He seemed to be well appreciated in Chechnya, Regis. I don't think we should belittle, how well appreciated Scott is over there. I mean, of course, you're there directly. You would know better than me. But, I mean, the red carpet was rolled out for him, definitely in Chechnya. So I encourage Scott to keep doing what he's doing. And, I mean, that's all any of us can do, is to do what we can to help spread awareness.
Conflicted
the West
was the word.
Suicidal. That's my analysis. Look, let's talk about that. Let's talk about his confliction. And I think a lot of it has to do with, his upbringing as a Marine, as a patriot, as a nationalist. I think these are things in his mind that are causing confliction. And if he saw the United States as a rogue nation run by a fucking psychopathic oligarchy, I think he would have a better, he would be able to better deal with these feelings of being an American, a nationalist, a patriot. I'm a patriot too. And real patriots hate our fucking oligarchy. But
I was going to say on that topic, what am I going to do? Talk to my prime minister? He's already the one guy here who's trying to save the continent of Europe. He's already doing everything he can to stop this lunacy. But let's get on, I'll give you just a couple of concrete steps that have been taking place since, this week, right? So all the nations in Europe, pretty much the idiots, starting with Britain and the Baltic, said, strike them with our weapons. So pretty much all of them. Germany was hesitant. Italy is still against it. But Germany, following the US, that Biden announced that, secretly, 3 officials announced that secretly is allowing this shit to happen. Yes, you can use US weapons deep inside Russia, but only in response to the Kharkov offensive or invasion. That was his stipulation. And just like that, in Der Spiegel or Bild, I think, Olaf Scholz said, because of the US initiative, we're going to allow the same. We're still not sending the Taurus missiles, which I think Ian might know it better, something like 800 kilometers, like way, way longer than the Atacams and the Storm Shadows and the Scalp missiles. That's the trouble we're in. And this fucking bastard, the Green Goblin, landed in Sweden, signed another of these this shit. He got around €500 million worth of small standover ships, but he also got all of their armored track vehicles. And two, this is the important part, these mini AWACS, like American radar system put on a smaller plane. It looks like a Cessna with a big thing on top, which is only used to coordinate air attacks. So, what the West is doing is getting the road. The next Wunderwaffe is the road into to get to the next step. And the F-16s, Russia already said, all of them are going to be treated as nuclear capable. And that is a true and present danger that, they should take seriously. I completely agree with Scott on that one, But I'm going to add a couple of perspectives here. First one, Western Europe. Shit, we've lost. We are not going to win unless we get something from the Biden to say the US is directly involved. And this began in Kiev because Kiev said, shit, we lost. If we don't get NATO directly involved, it's all over. And it's an act of desperation. It's an act of trying to stave off the inevitable defeat. And that does make people do really crazy things on the edge of absolute defeat. Thoughts? Anybody?
Sure. So
Ian.
I think that's true. I think the window for direct NATO involvement, I've been saying that for a while, the window for direct NATO involvement came and went in spring of 2022 when the Russian armed forces were smaller and also strung out over a greater area. They had a much larger footprint with less dense air defense, electronic warfare assets. So that was the time NATO could have at least conceivably done some sorts of intervention, but that window came and went. That was also the window when the time for Ukraine negotiating from a position of strength came and went, because at that point, they did have a numerical advantage on the front. They had full NATO and Warsaw Pact stockpiles within Ukraine itself and other Warsaw Pact countries, those Soviet stockpiles. NATO
that's all gone now.
Were all full. Yeah, so that was now the hand is kind of empty. There's now all they're going to get is what is they're back to living hand to mouth of waiting for stuff to roll off the conveyor belt into their arms, and that's just a trickle. As far as desperation, I don't know, because there's a big temptation, I think, for Ukraine to do something crazy that triggers NATO involvement, whether it's a false flag or just something particularly outrageous that forces it. However, there is a pattern, like with the missiles landing in Poland, of NATO just directly saying, no, that was not a Russian attack, that was a Ukrainian attack. So I think that's
one that killed two Polish firemen and a tractor. Yeah.
That one, yes. And so I think that set a precedent of if, they tried dirty, which Russia has made noises about before Ukraine potentially using a dirty bomb or some sort of false flag attack. If NATO was, if that was a case of Ukraine trying to do the whole tail wagging the dog thing, that's a sign that it wouldn't, that's an indication it wouldn't work. So there's, so I think you're right. There's a lot of desperation on the Ukrainian side to get NATO involved. But I think the window for NATO involvement has closed, and I think leveler heads and NATO itself realize that. So,
I would agree. I would agree with that. I think the time for NATO's entry into a direct war is over. But I want to add this perspective. As someone living here in Crimea, the last 2 nights, there have been a dozen or more attackums and drone attacks
already used, yes,
on attempts on the bridge at Kerch. And they also, Russia fortunately shot them all down. One of them fell on a car or a bus. I can't remember. I just heard this afternoon from friends.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of a ferry. Yeah,
they hit 2 ferries. Yeah. Now, this is what friends of mine said this afternoon, and I have friends who have been saying this for some time. When is Putin going to stop this? And when is he going to follow through on his, I guess you'd have to call it a threat, that all of you people in Western Europe live in very dense, small countries. You're at great risk.
Yeah.
And he even said that the United States is not exempt. So what some people here in Crimea are saying, because we're being attacked almost every day somewhere in Crimea, whether it's Sevastopol, whether it's near Simferopol, the capital, whether it's like just 10 or 15 kilometers from where I live in Alushta. It was hit last week. People are not living in fear, but people are beginning to ask, when is President Putin going to respond? When is enough enough?
Well, people say he doesn't respect the red lines, but those red lines were never Putin's red lines, and they say he didn't react. But the the attacks on Belgorod, this whole Kharkov, they call it an offensive, but it's just the cordon sanitaire, as he said, is a reaction to that. And I think it was Medvedev, the mad dog, or someone else who said, if this continues and longer range of weapons continue, the cordon sanitaire might include Kiev and Western Poland. It's as simple as that. The longer the threat, the longer we have to go. So I don't see him not delivering, but I understand the Russians' frustrations that they're still being shelled after all these years.
Yeah. And I'll say this about Putin. Most Americans have no idea what this man is like. You mentioned Putin in America, and immediately it's, he's
the
Hitler,
devil, yeah.
But this man has an incredible memory, an incredible mind. I think he borders on genius. He doesn't forget anything. He was trained as a lawyer, so everything he does, and if you listen to his words, is a...
Oh no, that's a bad time to freeze, Regis. Let's hope.
Oh no.
Let's hope the connection stabilizes.
The internet connection in Crimea in general is not great. I assume he has better internet connection than I had, but I was in a hotel and I could never find a good. It's because the major telecom company.
Okay, he's moving again. Sorry, Regis.
I'm having connectivity problems. I've tried 2 different VPNs and it's still the same bullshit. What I wanted to say,
mid-sentence, but go ahead. Yes.
You should not use VPN for StreamYard.
What's that?
You should not need a VPN for StreamYard.
Yeah, I do. I've been using it for over a year, Ian.
Let's talk about that after the show.
Yeah,
but
anyway, it's neither here nor there. It works for me. President Putin has shown that he will not be provoked into doing something rash. He's never acted that way in his life. And I think that Americans, whoever they are, who have us on the eve of destruction, do not understand that man or his mind or his behavior.
Yeah, restraint is not weakness, I would say.
Yeah, and
No.
I think obviously I've seen the views that call it's totally wrong, but I've seen the people who think Putin is a coward. Like I've seen those people, and I think they're a minority. I don't think they're anything close to being an influential part of Russia or the world. And I think, the vast majority of people understand that Putin, and I would include Xi also in this, of China, they're interested in managing the situation in a way that resolves it and it transforms the world, from a unilateral world order where the West just dominates everything with their rules-based order, do as I say, not as I do, to a multipolarism with the least amount of, fallout, which is, the least amount of human deaths, the least amount of economic catastrophe. So this is what they're engaged in right now. Xi and Putin are engaged in managing the decline of Western imperialism, and they want to do so, with the least loss of life, with the least loss of, with the least amount of suffering and poverty. And so, I'm glad, I'm fucking thankful it's those two. Because
I would say
they don't want the world to end in a pile of radioactive ash. Neither one
Yeah.
of them want that.
And it's in neither of their interests to see a collapsed ashes America. They don't want that. They want it to
Yeah.
be a normal country, but
Yeah.
not a complete defeated, humiliated
They don't
Eisenhower
want
Weimar
us
Germany. You know,
destroyed economically. They're not trying to destroy us. You know, no, it's our psychopathic oligarchy that's trying to maintain their own sphere of influence, their own power. And you know, we need a government of, for, and by the people, just like Russia gets, just like China gets. How come we can't get that? Well, we can, and we will.
when you all know that I think Trump is the first felon president today
Well,
of the United States, right?
That's a hell of a transition.
Well, you mentioned you're going to get a government buy-in for the people. Sorry, I know
don't
it's a
if I
can of worms.
I would not put either Russia or China on a pedestal to that extent. I mean, I think you're right. They won't go out of their way to create more negative effects, more loss of life and whatnot. But it's, you know, if they have to choose between themselves or us, it's not going to be, you know, a difficult choice either. So, you know, relying on, you know, the generosity of the opponent, I don't think is, you know, a good. It's not a game. It's not. Well, I would say it's not a good survival strategy. Let me say that it's not good. It's not the best survival strategy to assume that the other side will be graceful, and it's not necessarily.
No.
Well,
In international relations, only interests exist. There's no
I mean,
nothing else.
I
And it's
think we're
not
talking
in-
past each other,
Yeah.
and it frustrates me when somebody says you're wrong, Billy Bob, and then I listen to them, and they're not even addressing anything I said. So it's a tough discussion to have. I'm not sure exactly what you think. I think that you know, that would, yeah, I agree with you, Ian, totally. If it's down to Russia surviving or the U.S. surviving, Russia is not going to sacrifice itself to save the United States. But I mean, I wasn't suggesting that was true.
By the way, that sounds wonderful. Hello, Todd.
Mm.
A nice little bakery in the middle.
I've invited Todd on the show. He prefers to listen from his bakery, so that's cool too.
Good on you.
There's a good discussion, and you know, I hope I didn't abruptly terminate the exchange of ideas with my hostility. You know, I don't think Xi or Putin exist in this liberal paradigm where it's zero sum. Like, that's a Western mentality. That is not the fucking mentality of Putin, and is not the mentality of Xi. That is not how they fucking think. That's how the West thinks. And you know, it's that frustrates me. You know how freaking Scott gets frustrated with people not being, you know, worried about how things are going. I get frustrated that people are fucking stupid, and they project the ignorance of the West onto other societies and other cultures, other people, other governments, and that's a travesty. It's a fucking travesty. Okay.
All right. Let me.
So-
go ahead, True. Regis, respond.
The Reverend has this to offer, Ben.
Yes, please. Good sermon.
Not a sermon. You know, I used to think that maybe these people were psychopaths, sociopaths. Maybe they're suicidal. But I know in talking to some others, and it's difficult to have this kind of conversation with a lot of people, I'm often wondering if maybe what we're seeing in these actors in the United States, especially, and some of these actors across Europe, if evil has not become incarnate. I think there's no other way for me to look at what's happening other than to identify it as pure evil. What else would discard millions and millions of lives, children, destroy countries, all for what? Is it money? Is it something else? And so for me, I think I see what's happening as evil, and how has it maybe become incarnate in these people who have us on the eve of destruction.
I accept the word of Regis, and well said, but I'm not so tautological on this. Let's have a look at the Western colony of the US. What really enrages me, well, you'll see.
Foreign ministers, our discussions focused on our support for Ukraine. We all want to stop this war, but the paradox is that the better we prepare for the long haul, the sooner the war can end.
That's his paradox. What infuriates me, all of the leaders of Europe, sans pretty much Fico and Orban, have approval ratings in the teens, maybe 20s. They're down the fucking drain. Nobody wants this. But they talk about war in the name of peace. They are now hunting Russian agents within the members of parliament, the European Parliament. Anybody who spews Russia propaganda, they're going to try to send a telegram. The truth, the world has moved against them. They're desperate. And I don't see so much evil. Well, evil is always a result of something, and I don't see it in those terms. Is their position, what they thought, we are Macron losing out all of Africa, now probably New Caledonia, is fortunes of built on sucking the blood of the world. You remember Mr. Putin's comment about the vampire's ball is ending? That's why they get crazy. That's why they get crazy, because all of this that really hasn't changed, not in 1945, not since 1990, when the hyperpower, the US, emerged, was this colonial transformed into, neo-colonial. On the surface, it was anti-colonial. The system never changed, and now there's a proper threat to it. That makes them crazy, and that makes them want to do all this ridiculous.
I understand Regis, has a background in the priesthood, and so he sees things and he understands and he processes things through the good and evil lens. So, as a socialist, as a communist, I process things through the lens of class struggle. And so this is this is the class struggle playing out. It's the Western ruling class, fighting tooth and nail and engaging in economic, violent military, a propaganda struggle, to maintain their power. And, and I see the anti-imperialist bloc, the anti-imperialist forces, are fighting on behalf of the working class masses, on the behalf of humanity itself, to rid itself of this, this oligarchy, of this ruling elite, ruling class that doesn't put humanity's interests first. It puts their own narrow interests first. And there's a contradiction there, because a lot of times their interest is opposed to the interests of the masses. So, those are the terms that make more sense to me, because I don't know. I haven't died. I haven't experienced an afterlife. I'm not certain in the truth claims of religion, but I'm pretty certain in material reality and how, economic relationships work and how power, does its best to maintain and further its interests.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
Eschatological is what the word I was looking for. While the grand scheme of things, as in the great struggle between Russia, China, the multipolar world, and the decaying, pretty much the neo-colonial, is, I can understand in material terms. If you look at some fronts, like Gaza, yeah, I do see the face of evil. I've since had some time to catch up on child babies. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. And it might be in the name of, we're the chosen people and all that. That is unequivocally evil. So I do see it. I see it in the Banderites. I know what you mean, Regis. I'm not. Yeah, while I'm an atheist, not a militant one, I have no issue with Muslim comrades, Christian comrades, none of them. This is, I can understand. And I see what you mean. I do see. Go ahead, Carlo.
I do see an obvious dichotomy between what's occurring between the West and the rest of the world through the Belt and Road Initiative. Who has China attacked? Who has China destabilized?
No one since Vietnam.
What citizens of another country has China killed? The answer is none. None. There's been no imperial war launched by China in recent memory. And whereas in the West, it's been all war and destabilization. Like the poet Milton said, to wage by force and guile eternal war. Well, what character in Paradise Lost says that? Satan says that. I think Regis is on to something here. You know, I mean, what could be more obvious than that dichotomy? I just wanted to. I mean, how can the world? I mean, without being heavily propagandized, how can the world believe that China is working for evil in the world? I just, when they do it, let me know, and then maybe maybe you'll convince me. But I don't see building dams, schools, roads,
the
hospitals
side, you know.
So this is another good discussion. And I mean, I've made my perspective, I think, is pretty clear. But there are alternative perspectives. There are people that are not as sold on China's goodness, their saintlyhood, their being mother.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
they
I have a developmental mind. You know.
Yeah,
so
he was hyperbolic.
But I want to bring in some other opinions because not everybody shares my opinion, and I got to accept that. And I want, so for instance, let me try and steel man an alternative perspective. It's some people don't see, China and even Russia really as distinct from the New World Order, as, the global corporate hierarchy that just, runs everything through wealth, and functions through forums like the United Nations and like the World Economic Forum. So even, China, has participated at the World Economic Forum. China locked down their citizens during COVID, and didn't give them a lot of freedom. And these facts cause a lot of suspicion and concern and sometimes hostility towards China, and maybe to a lesser extent towards Russia. I'm not. So I don't know. Would anybody care to?
Those are people that were predisposed to dislike China and don't know anything about China. If you're predisposed to hate somebody, you look for the details, which you want to hate them for. COVID was convenient for them. We got to hate China because COVID and lockdowns. How many people died? Look at it. You can look it up. Look how many people died in China from COVID compared to the percentage of people that died from COVID in the U.S. under Trump.
Some could say those are bogus numbers, and then some could say, but was it worth it? There's different responses.
Was it worth it? If you're dead, it's
Regis,
worth it.
Ian or Regis.
If you're not dead, it's worth it.
Look, but we have two panelists in China, not one panelist and a guest in Russia, and I know for a fact that there is skepticism when it comes to China in Russia.
You're right. I think most of the Russians that I know who are paying attention to these things, and some are paying a lot of attention, have some kind of an inborn distrust of China. And they worry about being China's sidecar, China's little buddy. And that's just not part of the Russian soul and the Russian mentality. And I don't think that's part of the mentality of the people around Putin.
And I think it's not a part of the mentality in China. That's a Western effort to force you to divorce because, look, he's the boss dog and he's the underdog. They're trying to do this to you. But there's a reason Putin went to Harbin on his third day of his first foreign visit, which was to Xi Jinping. You probably saw the hug seen around the world, which is not very Chinese, not characteristic of Xi Jinping. And he went to Harbin, where there were some border clashes, not serious, between the Soviet Union and the People's Republic. And I think in every regard, this is on the mend. Hungary is a small part, but 75% of our investments in the last 2 years came from China. So, there's a reason for that too.
Let me point out. Go ahead.
The hug was a very clear message to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yes. all of the Washington media was, you have to teach Putin, you have to use your influence to Putin and to stop this war. And that was
there's a history. There's a very important history, and it's a recent history. And I believe it has taught lessons that Russia and China, at least the governments, have absolutely learned. And I mean, the Sino-Soviet split was a disaster for both countries.
And it's over.
And you know, they're just too smart to allow that to happen. And they're going to be able to manage their relationship, as difficult as it may be, since they share so much border. But their economies are there's a word here. Their economies are very
complementary, symbiotic, both
complementary to each other. And, you know, what Russia has, China needs. What China needs, Russia could use. And it's such a symbiotic, complementary relationship. And it's not going to be hard for enlightened individuals like Putin and Xi to manage that relationship. Now, can somebody come to power after them, you know, in 10, 20 years that is a fucking idiot like Khrushchev? Of fucking course. And that's always a possibility. It's always a concern. But I mean, Khrushchev was a total fuck, and he really fucked that relationship. But, you know, I mean, we can't just live in fear. Like, I mean, thankfully we have these two, and they understand.
I think Russia learned a lesson from that too. How Khrushchev came to power, the opportunist pig. I think lessons were learned there too.
Well, yes, it's true with the Chinese. What really caused that the Sino-Soviet split was the de-Stalinization, which Mao was very unhappy. The Chinese were very unhappy, and Nixon took advantage of that, going to China and building good relations with them. My impression is pretty much in line with what Regis said. I would just say that the Russian attitude seems to be, well, I mean, it's a cautious attitude, but it's also one rooted in respect. So when after the Civil War and China was admitted into the UN, the U.S. opposed their entry, despite words that they wouldn't. They did oppose it. And the Soviets, despite the split and basically coming within fairly close to open warfare a couple of times, they did vote to allow China in. So the respect. So even when relations between Russians and the Chinese were bad, there was still respect there. And so regardless of whether they were on friendly or bad terms with China, the Russian attitude was never cavalier like the American attitude is. It's cavalier. You know, there was always the Russian attitude that war with China would not be good. The Chinese are very capable, and I think the Americans don't share that. And I would go so far as to say the Korean War, which is literally called the Forgotten War, I think that was for the USA political establishment the single most traumatic event of the 20th century. It was the largest battlefield defeat in American history.
Even though it leveled Pyongyang,
yes, it is just, and you know, I think Americans just did not take the Chinese seriously and did not realize how far they had gone to annoy the Chinese, to wake up to 500,000 Chinese coming across the border. And so, you know, and the problem also, I think, Americans don't understand Russians particularly well, and that's mostly due to our own ignorance, but we understand Chinese even less. You know, how much education about Chinese history do we get in schools? Very little. And most of that is propaganda. So there's very little cultural understanding. So, and cultural understanding is really important to understand what should you not do to those people? What's going to really get them agitated with you? We don't really.
There's an interesting question about, has the West made a decision? You know, have they made a decision, or are there still options on the table? I mean, is it possible that they can go forward with cooperation, or has the decision been made to engage in conflict?
Every question like that has two. Well, I said every question like that has two sides. And the problem is you don't understand the other side because there's two actors. There's always two actors involved. And we don't understand the other actor to know, because we could very easily sleepwalk into.
Well, no.
I'd like
this
to.
is my point. This is my point. It's the U.S. has the decision to make. It's up to them. Conflict or cooperation. Russia wants cooperation. China wants cooperation. Period. So it's the West. The West has to make a decision. I don't think they've made a decision yet. And I mean, they're trying. They're trying to look for a way. But they could have had a hot war with China a long time ago over Taiwan, over the South China Sea, if they wanted one. To this point, they haven't won one. It's easy. They could just cross a red line and there would be war. They haven't done it yet. Are they planning to in the future? It remains to be seen. Every day that passes, China's getting stronger. Russia's getting stronger. So I'm optimistic. I have a lot of optimism that the West is not suicidal, that they're going to realize there is no option with a war, against China, a war against Russia. And a lot's gonna ride on the November election, perhaps. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe not, because the president doesn't make any decisions anyway. So
let me add this.
I'd like to add something to go, Regis.
I'm sure you've all been following it. I don't know whether you've had shows about it, but leading economist in the United States, Jamie Dimon,
Jamie Dimon, the head of one of these, Chase Manhattan, maybe.
Chase Manhattan Bank. European economists have all been predicting the collapse of the United States economy.
And the dollar,
all of them.
Yes.
And
yes.
soon. So my question is this. Might the United States experience the same thing that the Soviet Union did? Might it collapse under its own weight, its own lack of morality, its own lack of understanding what has caused it? And maybe there's hope in an economic collapse, because what that would do to the United States, 800 military bases around the world without funding, millions of troops, really. Well, I don't know if it's millions, tens of thousands.
2 million, yeah.
Whatever it is, scattered all around the world. Plus, what's going to happen when the majority of American people, and too many are comfortable, feel the pain like so many are now, with rising prices, inflation going out of sight, America not being able to handle or even begin to address any of these issues? If collapse is on the horizon, what will happen?
That's my concern too. That's my thinking. Once their global economic system, it's clear that it's unsustainable, they might resort to, their military, and the 800 bases they have around the world to get, as much as they can, as opposed to the inevitable collapse that they see happening. And
I don't want to. Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Don't want to detract to this point, but to add some news, I think it was today I saw in Bloomberg that the U.S. bonds, treasuries, they've lost their charm and they're no longer the safe haven of the world. Gold has pretty much overtaken it, which is a very serious, big red flag that goes on. I think the BII, the Bank of India, repatriated very quietly a lot of gold, I think from the UK, not the US, but these things are happening. But if I may, I didn't know we were going in this direction. Going back to the previous point very quickly, as in the US not understanding Russia and China, I did want to add, I think that people might find interesting. Regis, you don't quite agree with the Soviet era of Russia, but I think there's a reason that it existed and it also works in Russia because, and you are free to respond if you think I'm wrong, they have a spirit of collectivism, the collective above.
Well, I would agree with that. I would agree with that 100%.
Because I want to say, there's 180 or something nationalities in Russia, 56 in China, and they've unified the language and all that 1,000 years ago, So the wars have taught them 20 million Chinese, there are 27 million Russians there to hang together. That is, I don't know, it's not something that the West can understand. The hugely individualist society, if I get my gallon of milk and my whatever, my fortune, fuck the world, they just can't get that through their head. that they really are that different. And that's why the demonization of Hitler and Putler, the two big bad new evils, is there. I wanted to add that I didn't know we were going to switch to anybody else. Go ahead. Sorry, to switch to economics.
I can't keep all my thoughts in my head, but I got 2 out of 3. First of all, it's gratifying to hear about the 214 radicals of Jiangxi, which was used to bring all the different languages together. I have a copy of that sitting next to my desk upstairs.
Standardized language. That's why Europe is so envious. We never did this.
The second thing I wanted to mention is rides on the piggyback of what Ben just said, and that is African countries. Many African countries are repatriating their gold.
One after the other.
From Western and U.S. banks. It's almost like a stampede.
Carlo, every pyramid scheme runs on one currency, which is trust. And once that is shaken, that's what you see in that.
Yeah. No, and I think that trust has been shaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we talk about the future economy, the future global economy, the U.S. had a pretty bad, they called it a recession, but you could have called it a depression. It was like 2008, right? 2008, 2009. And who stepped in and helped to bail the United States out?
Let me do the Trump. China. I can't do the Trump.
China did. China stepped in, bought all kinds of bonds, helped to stabilize the U.S. economy. Got a thank you from the chairman of the Fed, and then in a couple of years later, of course, they started the whole genocide hoax in Xinjiang. So here's my point: China wants a prosperous United States. China wants to export to a wealthy U.S. middle class. It doesn't serve them any good at all to have the United States collapse economically. So if the U.S. would just stop antagonizing and trying to attack and regime change China and Russia, these countries are more than happy to engage in the liberal paradise that was promised to them when the Soviet Union dismantled itself. This peace through mutual prosperity, win-win trade. Let's work on humanity's, crisis issues. Climate change, pandemics, things like. Now that's scary to some people, I know. But let's work together on tackling humanity's issues. Let's develop the underdeveloped world, and let's not antagonize. Let's respect sovereignty. Let's have everybody needs to have their security respected too, and not stepped on. So this is the world that China and Russia want to live in, and it's the world that the United States is currently opposing. But all they got to do is change, and that's my advice to them. And I mean, I think ultimately that change is going to happen. I mean, how it happens remains to be seen.
Yeah, they resist tooth and nail.
I don't know, Ben, if you would agree with me, living in Europe, but I have many friends scattered across Europe who have been telling me that the majority of people in many of these countries do not respect those people. Most unelected in the EU, they do not respect, and they do not believe their governments are serving them. I'd like to believe that many more people in the United States are feeling the same way.
This is the new cover of The Economist, and Kit Clarenberg, recently reinstated in Twitter, had this to say: we're all going to die. Everybody hates these people, I think, in every country, including the most occupied ones like Czechia, where the NATO fucking foreign ministers are currently meeting. Their approval is in the teens, the 20s, Macron, Jesus Christ, Scholz.
Yeah.
These are jokes, running jokes. I can't wait for the time that they're going, but I'm also apprehensive about what the fuck comes after these people, because we are nowhere near like healthy continent, which we could be. Hungary, Serbia, to some extent, Slovakia being the exception to the rule, but to the west of us.
It's a Western oligarchy. It's not a democracy. These people aren't representative of the people. They represent the wealthy class of elites. And people just know not to trust them, and that they don't have their best interests at heart. But the propaganda, information space is just so it's so effective and successful at getting people to embrace narratives and thoughts and ideas and ideologies that are totally unrelated to actual reality. So I mean, that's the big hurdle that we still have to overcome. And I mean, people need to unite and demand actual representation. But that's it's easier said than done, obviously.
I think it's happening. You see the millions of people all over the world, across Europe, in India and Asia, across Asia, millions of people are rising up in the streets. The Israeli genocide in Gaza has woken up people to realize who the pariahs are.
They don't understand how isolated they've become, do they? Even Europe is turning against them, which is really, really weird. Completely. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But the masses are entirely disenfranchised because who's up for, who are going to be the two presidential nominees in November? It's going to be Trump and what is it? A lunatic and a corpse? No, a criminal and a corpse?
Something like that.
A felon, a corpse, and an illegitimate.
So even though the people
whatever you call
are up in arms and unhappy, we're not able to make that change because all that they offer us is more the same. But I think Trump has done himself quite a disservice by just being all in with Israel and his giving lip service to supporting Israel and the genocide there. I don't think is helping his cause any.
Even the Democrats are terrified by their chances being diminished by this Biden, full approval of slaughter, of a new Holocaust, basically. Yeah.
Well, Israel will definitely hurt Biden more than Trump. I mean, I don't think there's any danger of the Republican base being upset with Trump for supporting the Zionist movement. I mean, I think it's actually more likely there would be more people upset with him in the Republican base if he didn't stand with Israel.
That might be true. No, that might be true.
Completely flip-flopping on Ukraine might hurt him a little bit. I think even that won't hurt him much because that's just not even on most Americans' radar screen rather. I mean, the polls will show. I mean,
remember Mike Johnson?
Yes, if you directly ask Americans about Ukraine, they'll say it's important or whatever. But like if you ask open-ended questions, it's not even Ukraine's not even in the top 5 issues they are thinking about.
That's right.
You remember that graph? Like inflation is the top issue in America.
Yeah, inflation, economy, abortion, social issues, all that stuff is way, 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 way up there. Well, Ukraine, no one cares. So.
And I don't want to put too much on polls, but in the 8 key states, Trump is ahead in 7 of the 8 key states that they consider: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio.
The purple states, yeah,
and
he might
Biden
be presiding from
on
prison.
the ballot in Ohio yet. So
yeah, I mean,
he will be, but I mean, it's you gotta laugh. I mean, the election is so absurd. You have to just basically laugh at where the U.S. is at.
Did you guys follow the trial? Because I'm not clear on what they got him on. Was it incorrectly filling up a business form about paying the porn star? Is that why he's a felon now?
I can explain that a little bit because when I get up in the morning and have my coffee, I'm too lazy to go to the computer and watch something with substance. So I watch CNN. He was convicted on all 34 counts, but they're Class E felonies, which is the lowest classification for felony possible. It's just one step above a misdemeanor. But what he was convicted of is paying off the porn star Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet so that the information wouldn't get out during the election that he had an affair with her.
And that wasn't in the paperwork, right?
That's election fraud, considered election fraud, because you can't lie or pay off somebody to keep quiet if it's going to affect the outcome of the election.
Well, it's not declaring a campaign. I mean, it's a very, very questionable.
Yeah, that right. Not declaring a
campaign expense, and there's not even a lot. I mean, it's basically entirely on that lawyer's words. That Trump even, because if Trump just paid her out of his own, just pulled out his wallet, here's $1 million, now shut up. that wouldn't even need to be declared because it's a personal expense. So they're really, really, really stretching the definition.
There was one person that was more happy than anyone else in the entire universe at the guilty verdict.
I would call her the original Wicked Witch, because even Victoria Nuland and Ursula von der Leyen here in Europe are pale imitation to the original bitch. Check this out. This was sometime today.
Thank you.
Woo.
If you want to call someone flippant and glib, or maybe celebrating too early, that's this bitch.
Thank you so much. Anything going on today?
She looks like something is eating her from the inside out.
Celebrating. Look,
That was a big smile she had.
We got him on a Class E felony.
I don't even know what they're celebrating about. Frankly, I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna look. But many
You have liberal friends. Some of them jumped in front of the television, took selfies about Trump being guilty.
Yeah, I know it's just crazy. But for Trump, as far as Trump's concerned, his male voters, they love the whole thing, and the female voters deny he ever did it. But the male voters, I mean, they all want to sleep with a porn star. That's how ridiculous this American politics is. For him, if he had said, "Wow, I did have sex with her. Yes, I did. I didn't lie. He didn't deny it over and over again."
Isn't it cool that it's Hillary Clinton celebrating, where we all, I think, remember the guy? I did not have sex with that woman.
Yeah, right. Right, Lewinsky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a farce!
Yeah, this is the world we're living in. It's madness.
Well, I can tell you, I'm glad I'm not living through that carnival. Trump versus Biden heading towards November. I haven't heard anything about it until right now. Really, it's been weeks. And the only thing I'll hear about it is when Russians will ask me, "Who do you think will be better? Who do you think will win?" I go, you know what?
Trump,
it's not going to make any
You
difference.
brought up Jamie Dimon earlier, Regis. You brought up Jamie Dimon earlier, and he was recently, said, "Hey, I'm okay with Trump." So I think Trump has ingratiated himself with the establishment. I don't think they're too concerned about him, and I don't think there's going to be much of a difference between Trump and Biden. I still would like to see Trump just for entertainment value, but again, I'm a privileged white male, and if I was a person of color, I might think totally different, and that's legit.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Bloomberg,
I'm wondering if there isn't a clash of American elite or oligarchs, whatever you want to call them.
well, there's already been a lot of signs of that. They don't agree on.
There's got to be
things like Ukraine,
Trump,
China.
For Trump to have the money. Jamie Dimon represents that.
And now apparently
powerful.
Mr. Elon Musk is going to be an advisor on some things. I don't care about that. But as you said, not the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, as the main feature this morning, had this to say: Wall Street billionaires are rushing back to Trump. Verdict be damned. So yeah, he's got the money now.
He's gonna, just like Eugene Debs, they're gonna be in prison running for president. No, that's a terrible. I should never have even made that comparison. Eugene Debs was
Trump
elected.
and Debs.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, but he's going to be sentenced in July, and it's technically possible, but highly unlikely. Highly unlikely.
Billy Bob, don't you know it's Trump and Mother Teresa? He's compared himself to Mother Teresa.
I saw that. I did see that.
Yeah.
No, but I saw that America saved the world when landing in Normandy. Okay, this to me, from far away valley of the Carpathian Mountains, is the best election ever. Now that I completely see through it, because I ate the Obama shit at the first round, not in the second. It's just the best thing to watch. I just got my popcorn. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. It's true.
I'm going to buy myself a couple of Cuban cigars and some Cuban rum, and I'm going to
watch
go
the
smoke
debates.
them. Yeah, no, I won't watch anything. I'm just going to enjoy whatever ends up happening, because there's no way the world will not be able to escape from the result.
Nope, you're right on that one. Yeah, who gets to take on the final dip of the plane out of fuel? Who gets to ride it? Who gets to drive it? That's what I see.
I wish we were allowed to buy Cuban cigars and Cuban rum here. That's nice that you guys are trading.
And what's even more unfortunate is we can get them here, but there's no way we can send them to you.
That's right. That's right.
We have
It's
no
national
mail
security.
service. No
Another
mail.
unconscionable policy of Western imperialism.
Oh,
Funny,
boy.
I thought it would be a threat to national security or something. To get Cuban cigars in the US.
It is.
you know
It
what?
is.
There was a story that went around that before the Cuban embargo, John Kennedy had sent somebody over there and brought back boxes of Cuban cigars. Supposedly he was an aficionado.
So he'd get a stash after the embargoes. He still have.
So
Yeah, he had a
he
stash.
got him before they became unavailable. That was smart.
Yeah,
He saw that coming.
He would smoke a Cuban cigar after he fucked Marilyn Monroe. In those days, no one spoke about it. Today, it's all out in the open. I was thinking about all the politicians who have fallen by having mistresses like Gary Hart, and I can't remember their names, but their faces come up. It's been a number of them who wanted to run for president in that medium era after the fact that Eisenhower had a mistress and George W. Bush, the senior, had a mistress, and Kennedy had a mistress. They all had mistresses. Even Johnson apparently had a mistress. Oh my God! So it's now then it went through a phase where if you had a mistress and the press caught you out, you couldn't run. And now if you have a mistress, there's people going, "Wow, yeah, baby." It's kind of the European approach, but much grungier, much filthier because of the oppressed nature in sexuality of the American public.
You've been Francofied. That sounds French to me, to be honest. The flaunting of the mistresses.
Yeah.
I just want to say, even more ironic that both parties in their policy, they don't want to talk about war or the economy. They want to talk about sex, abortion, and morality. Isn't it even more ironic?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it started the baby boomers. I mean, the previous generations, before the silent generation, are mostly gone. That we have Biden. He was born in 1944, 1942. The World War II generation, the pre-World War II generation, I think they were the more conservative voters, and they're gone. Now you got the baby boomers. When you look at Mad Men or shows like that, that's how, they were, that's the weed and
womanizing
sexual
and
revolution.
Yeah.
The sexual revolution. It's a different world now. So.
Yeah. It is telling that Trump is facing a scandal, but it was from like years ago, right? This is like from 17 years ago. Because, I mean, they're both in their late 70s. Not that matters. Guys, we better just wrap it up. We're devolving into...
This is where we would, yeah.
Regis, thank you so much for joining us. You always bring so much to our program, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Love your sermons.
Thanks, Regis. Thank you.
We will see everybody back on, what is today? Today's Friday. We'll see everybody back next Tuesday. Thank you very much.